Now I'd like to introduce our next storyteller. Doreen comes from One Acre Fund in Uganda. One Acre provides smallholder farmers with asset-based financing and market facilitation to reduce post-harvest losses and optimize fair market prices. Let's welcome Doreen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. I grew up in a small, idyllic mining village on the backdrop of the Rwenzori Mountains on the borders of Uganda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My childhood was perfect. I grew up in a very prosperous mining town. But when I was in the first grade, there was a rebel invasion from the Allied Defense Forces from the Congo that forever destroyed the fabric of my small town and introduced me to the concept of international development and foreign aid. I got to see at a very young age what happens when foreign aid, well-meaning foreign aid, is executed poorly. There was an influx of food and clothes, you name it, the usual. But no one really asked anyone in my town what they needed to rebuild the fabric of the town. We needed the mine to function. We didn't need clothes, we didn't need food. So tens and thousands of dollars were spent, and up to this day, Kilembe has actually never really recovered. So when I joined university, I said, I am going to join the development sector, but I am going to do it right. After all, I have first-hand experience of how this works, and I also know how not to do it. So I signed up for service, and I was posted to one of the most isolated Quechua Mayan communities on the borders of Belize and Guatemala. My experience was phenomenal. I had great impact on paper. I worked directly with women in the community to develop programs for women. We started a softball team for Mayan communities in a village where I was told that Mayan women are not allowed to play sports. We developed projects for young girls to help them raise livestock to pay for high school instead of getting married at the ages of 14. I can go on and on and on. But I want to share one story that has really grounded my work and to me resonates with this idea of proximity. One day when we were at the school, I used to work directly with a nurse and the community health worker. I walked into the third grade class and met a 10-year-old. Out of respect to her family, I'm going to change her name and call her Jane. When I walked into the classroom, I saw this girl and I thought that I had seen a real-life ghost. Her face was white, her lips were blue, and her fingers were purple. I was shocked, so I ran back to the community health worker. We were distributing vitamin supplements, vitamins for the Americans. I went back to the community health worker. I told her, I was like, do you know? And she's like, you just met Jane. I was like, yes, this girl appears in 3 colors. No 10-year-old girl should appear in 3 colors. She's like, yes, I know, she's been like that for the last 10 years. But I felt compelled to do something about it. So I went and I met her family. And in speaking to her, her mother told me that they thought she had something, which in Mayan culture we call a was. It's a concept that's very difficult to explain. The concept is, if a pregnant woman sees something unusual during her pregnancy, that thing can pass on a deformity to the child. But it's not defined what that thing could be. So it could be anything. It could be a woman innocently walking around the village who sees a goat giving birth. And the only way the bush doctors, the local doctors, we call them Ilonels, the only way the Ilonel can actually treat this is the mother has to remember exactly what it is that they saw, and the bush doctor has to take a piece of it, burn it, and the patient has to inhale the fumes. So for 10 years, poor Jane's mother had been trying to remember exactly what it is that she had seen, and she couldn't. I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine the pain that she must have felt. So I felt that, Western educated, there must be a scientific explanation, there must be a medical explanation for this girl's illness. So I reached out to medical NGOs, to the mobile clinics that were coming through my village, even to the medical missionaries who I used to despise. And Jane was treated for everything and anything, bronchitis, pneumonia, asthma, and still she remained white, purple, and blue. And every time I met her, it always felt like she was going to breathe her last. So I was like, maybe she'll be fine after all. She's been like this for 10 years. So during this time, her grandfather, Jane's grandfather, got tuberculosis, and the community health worker and I were responsible for visiting him every day to make sure that he was taking his medication. We were checking his vitals and also doing health education for the family. So in one of these visits, The nurse sees Jane playing outside with her friends, and she came back in. She's like, Doreen. I was like, I know, you just met Jane. She's like, yeah, she's 10 years old, and she's purple, blue, and white. I was like, yes, I know, but that's her. She's like, no, it feels like she's going to stop breathing. I was like, yes, it feels like that, but she's not going to stop breathing. So the nurse said, we have to do something about it. And so we asked the family to allow us to take blood samples. That was on a Monday. And the nurse asked that the family take Jane to the hospital the following Wednesday. Jane was taken to the hospital, but she never came back. She died. When she died, right before she died, I went on vacation. I'd put in a lot of work, and I'd gone to celebrate my wins and the grants that were coming in. When I came back, my aunt called me. She said, Doreen, we just lost a little girl. And instantly, I knew exactly who she was talking about. And it broke my heart. So I bought a few things from the store as per Mayan culture. I went to visit the house, but on my way, the village chairman called me. He said, Doreen, I heard that you, the health worker, and the nurse killed the little girl. I mean, you can imagine my shock. I was like, what are you talking about? I was not in the village. I mean, I was not even in the country. How can you hold me responsible for the death of this young girl? I continued on to the family's home. It was the most uncomfortable and the most painful experience of my life. You cannot argue with someone's grief and their pain. And so I sat through, I listened to what the family had to say. I listened to the mother trying to call the husband to figure out where they would get $500 to bring the body back to the village. For context, my community was so isolated that up until 10 years ago, there was no road. So people had to hike 8 hours through the thick Mayan jungle to get to the closest village, where they would take a bus for another 3 hours to get to the nearest town or hospital or police station. So we got a road, but it was 3 hours. We were on a good day in dry season, we're 3 hours away from town. And in rainy season, we were 3 to 8 hours, so sometimes we actually couldn't get out of the village. So I sat through that experience. I went home. Quite honestly, I cried a lot. It is a huge allegation to be held responsible for something like that. But I also had to be very introspective and think about what role I could have actually played in this girl's death. After all, she had survived for 10 years. The truth of the matter is, scientifically, I knew I was not responsible. What they found out when they went to pick up her results is that Jane had been living with acute tuberculosis for 10 years. No one survives with acute tuberculosis for that long. It's a miracle in of itself. And it had actually traveled up to the brain by the time they found it. So, yes, on paper, Western educated, I knew I was not responsible. Her disease had a name, her disease had a treatment. But at the same time, if people don't survive for 10 years with acute tuberculosis, how did this girl manage to survive for 10 years? It forced me to ask myself, is there some kind of truth, even the smallest amount of truth to this crazy Mayan tradition? And this story has shaped my work in the way I think about development. In that even the most well-intentioned of us who think that we have gotten it right, that we know how to do this, sometimes we forget that we have to close the gap between our own personal biases, the cultures of the people that we're trying to support, and the interventions that we're trying to build for them. Today I work for an organization called One Acre Fund. We work in East Africa, and I was very intentional in choosing which institution I would work for. I chose to work with One Acre Fund because I strongly do believe that at the heart of the organization cares about only building programs that have proven impactful for the clients that we're trying to serve. But to anyone here in the development sector, I urge you to listen. And it sounds so simple and so small, but it's so easy to get it wrong. Thank you.
Wow. What a difficult story to tell us. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I don't think anyone's going to forget your words here today. Thank you.
Thank you for the platform.
Any questions for Doreen? Or are we all just so deeply in thought about her experience.
I wonder, did the family blame you as well?
Should I just respond?
Sure. I just want to know if the family also blamed you for this death?
It was a transition. I think initially when this happened, they didn't really understand, and what the hospital didn't do very well was explain to them exactly what tuberculosis was. That
Tuberculosis,
happened,
yeah.
tuberculosis. That happened after the fact. So there was a lot of Mayans had never really interacted with the formal medical system, and that's how they were treated when they went to the hospital. They were given medication, but no one really invested time in explaining to them what their illnesses were and why they were being treated a certain way. So we did a lot of health education after both Jane and her grandfather's death, and I think the family came around. But initially, yes, they did hold us responsible, and I think it's fair. I mean, my community got a community health worker for the very first time in 2013 when I got there. And we are the people who connected them to the hospitals and to doctors. So when they thought about formal medication of the formal health sector, they thought about me and the community health worker. And we were the only people present in the community. So I felt that it was fair that that blame was being put on the people who had introduced them to the system.
Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you.
Thank you.